have Congressman Rick Crawford on the line. Rick, welcome back, sir. Thanks, as always.
Hey, you do this all the time on Friday. So I'm listening to your bumper music, and I'm getting into Johnny Cash, and then you make me talk.
I know. Well, you know what I was thinking? We always say with Johnny Cash Friday, we try to listen to as much Johnny Cash as we can, while at the same time peppering in the news of the day. And you're the news. And oftentimes oftentimes when I get to the news, they're like, oh, we want to listen to more Johnny Cash. And so, yeah, it's kind of a disadvantage sometimes,
Yeah.
to be on during that day. Hey, let me ask you this, Rick. Your band, Triple Nickel, do you guys ever do any Johnny Cash covers?
Yeah, a couple. Yeah, of course, everybody does, Folsom Prison Blues, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You kind of got to do that. But, yeah, we do a couple, yeah.
Nice. Okay,
Yeah.
Well, so what's going on, Rick? Are you in D.C. now?
I am. Yeah, we are in session today, and it's a probe season, so it's a busy time of the year when we're trying to get, basically get all the bills paid, for the next fiscal year. And believe it or not, I mean, we're making good progress on our probe bills. We're on schedule, on track, and everything. And we want to understand the Senate's actually doing something for a change. And so, that's good news. We're on track to maybe get these things done.
Wow, that's good. Yeah, and that's how long has it been since we've actually kind of had regular order when it comes to the budgeting process?
1994, I think.
Oh gosh!
I mean, you got to laugh to keep from crying. It's really kind of sad. But yeah, it's as I understand it, 1994 was the last time that we got all 12 appropriations bills through both chambers, conferenced, and signed. So what we end up with is sometimes a portion. We get a few of them done, then we do an omnibus appropriations bill as a catch-all to clean up, or something like that. And what we've seen so much of in the last few years is these continuing resolutions. And so, I'm hoping that'll change this time around.
Yeah. I've been following a little bit of, what's going on with the trade. And I know we had you on maybe a couple months ago talking about, these different tariffs and things like that. Are there any new developments, any new concerns that you have with what's going on?
Yeah, I think there's really kind of something that escaped my attention, but really I think it's worth sharing, and that is that if you view the tariffs in the context of tax reform, what that means. And so what we're seeing is that because of our tax reform, because now we are a more competitive market in the global space, because we have fewer U.S. businesses wanting to locate offshore, and because we have more U.S. businesses that are located offshore, either coming back or repatriating their dollars to invest in the United States, it's empowering our economy, and the effect that it's having on the Chinese economy is really it's a pretty chilling effect. And so if you combine that with tariffs, this is why China is in a panic about tariffs. And so when we say tariffs, from the trade standpoint here in the United States, people tend to freak out and they tend to panic. And thinking back to my ag econ class at Arkansas State University, tariffs were inherently bad. We can't do tariffs because that's bad for U.S. agriculture. But then at the same time, we talk about terms like inelastic or elastic demand. Well, the demand in China is decidedly inelastic. They have to have soybeans, and there's only a certain number of them out there, and we're a top 3 exporter. And so, in the short term, what you've seen is a drop in the price. But what's taking place now is these countries are scooping up U.S. soybeans, and we haven't even gotten to harvest yet. So I think what you're seeing is that there's a really incredible amount of pressure on the Chinese economy. I think they have been, sort of what I call economic saber rattling now, and have done for quite some time. They're a belligerent actor in economically. They're a belligerent actor militarily, politically, and otherwise. And so, it's really about time that we decided, hey, we're going to get in the war too. Quite frankly, China has been at war with us for at least 20 years. Ever since they've been in the WTO, you'd think that would have somewhat of a stabilizing effect in terms of our relationship with China. But in fact, it hasn't, because the WTO allows them to get away.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being with us today. The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. That's what you're listening to. That's what you found. If you would like to contribute to the program today, you can sound off on Facebook. That's facebook.com/Conduit News, where we are up and live broadcasting across multiple platforms, also YouTube and conduitnews.com. We got a great show for you today. Coming up at the top of next hour, we're going to be having our good friend Joe, who's on the other side of the glass. He'll be taking the Conduit for Action quiz that is now up and available at conduitforaction.org. Then at 7:33 this morning, we'll be interviewing Judge Jeanine Pirro about her new book, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals. That's Liars, Leakers, and Liberals. We'll be interviewing her. Very excited about that. I've got some here's the thing. I was doing some research. The book went on sale on Tuesday. I was doing some research about the book and, the contents of it and that sort of thing. And I think it's really fascinating because you've got to understand one of the things that I have discovered in my research and preparing for this interview is that Peter Strzok, she talks about Peter Strzok. She talks about James Comey in this book. And one of the things that I found fascinating was that their whole chapter on Peter Strzok, obviously took place and was written before his testimony, his disastrous testimony before the Congressional Committee. Was that last week, I think, while Trump was abroad? Yeah, I think it was last week. And so that's fascinating how they pretty much pegged his character right on even before he testified. So we'll talk about that. They've got a lot to get to today. Before we get to that interview, though, we have a little bit of national news, as well as over at Conduit for Action, they have a new piece up about nursing home owners and returning campaign contributions. Governor Hutchinson returning a campaign contribution. It's a very good piece, and we're going to dive into really the political mechanisms, the wheels that are turning here. And we're going to report on it, and a lot of people aren't going to report on this. So, anyway, stay tuned for that. Hey, Joe. Joe on Facebook, not you, Joe. This Joe on Facebook is writing that I'm out of coffee. I kind of am out of coffee. I've got a new system. I got a new delivery mechanism where I'm drinking coffee out of a thermos, but I pour it into a cup. But I only pour a little bit at a time because if I do a 15, 20-minute radio segment, you don't want a whole cup of coffee to be cold, right? So, anyway. All right, let's start with the top. Yesterday on the program, I made an observation. It's very simple. The fact is, the state of Arkansas's economic development policy has to do with taking your taxpayer dollars, my taxpayer dollars, and giving them to Chinese companies, recruiting them here, incentivizing them, picking winners and losers, allowing these Chinese companies to come to Arkansas to use our resources to grow their businesses. And that is Governor Asa Hutchinson's economic development philosophy. He's made several trips to China. He's successfully gotten at least 2 companies to commit to coming here. And aside from the fact that I disagree with the policy of the government giving away taxpayer dollars and not treating all businesses equally, I do think it is reasonable to criticize which countries we do business with. When I got off the air yesterday, I tweeted, can you imagine the backlash based on the media if we treated and recruited Russian companies into Arkansas the way we do the Chinese? And yet you have Russia that's annexed Crimea, but you also have China that's annexing essentially the South China Sea, pushing the boundaries, building up its military, creating these fake false islands. We had, I pointed out yesterday on the program that on Friday when Congressman Rick Crawford was on the program, we were talking about Trump's tariffs and everything else and how we have been, in a sense, in an economic war with China for a very long time. And it was good to hear him say that, but it got me thinking over the weekend, well, if that's the case, then why would we want to make them rich? Enter Donald Trump. NATO, at the summit, he exposed German hypocrisy, wanting NATO in the United States, which funds most of NATO, to protect Germany. But Germany is what? They inked this gas pipeline deal, and they're making Russia rich. So if logic suggests that if Russia is a threat, okay, why would you give them their money, specifically energy? Why would you be so dependent on, with your energy, 70% of your energy now coming from Russia? And Donald Trump exposed that. Likewise, I think it's reasonable to be skeptical about our economic development strategy in Arkansas concerning the Chinese. Why would we want to make Chinese communist companies rich by giving them our taxpayer dollars when we're in a trade war with them? Now, am I the only one that thinks that is at least something to be debated? Now, the governor Hutchinson has said, hey, look, my Chinese hopes, I'm paraphrasing here, do not conflict with the MAGA agenda. And he said that after, I think, meeting with the president or talking to, some economic advisors of the president. And I'm sure the governor hopes that's the case. I'm sure he hopes that his, taking our taxpayer dollars to recruit Chinese companies here, I'm sure he wants that to not conflict with the MAGA agenda, but I'm not so sure. Enter FBI Director Christopher Wray. Check this out for a second. Go ahead and hang on one second. The Daily Caller is mad at my computer because I have an ad blocker on right now, and I don't know, man, I don't know how many times I have to turn the ad blocker off, but I know we don't have. Go ahead and throw it up on the screen here, Joe, because everything's good on this side. I can't get my computer to work. So listen to what this is. So FBI Director Christopher Wray, headline, The Daily Caller, Chuck Ross, Chinese espionage, most significant. It's the most significant spy threat facing the United States of America. Now think about that. It's the most significant spy threat we have. Do you think they might embed somebody in communist Chinese companies from the Shandong province? Is it possible? Come on. Can you imagine, seriously, with all of this hubbub about Russia and everybody wanting to go to war with Russia, which I don't understand. I honestly don't understand. Don't misunderstand me. Russia is not benign. I don't believe Russia is benign, but it's strange that the Democrats they didn't want the meeting to take place for some reason. It's very weird. Listen to this. China, rather than Russia, according to the Daily Caller's Chuck Ross, is the most significant long-term threat to the United States, according to FBI Director Christopher Wray. He said this yesterday during an interview with NBC's Lester Holt at the Aspen Ideas Forum. Wray said that the FBI has economic espionage investigations in all 50 states that trace back to Chinese activity. In all 50 states, well, gee, golly, that would include Arkansas. Yeah, that's right. And what are we doing? We're having press conferences with the head of the Arkansas Director of Economic Development, and we're inviting them here. We're not only inviting them here, we're making them rich. And we had Mike Preston, the head of the Arkansas Economic Development Commission, look out at tell the Chinese delegation that was here, and yeah, let's call them a delegation, not a representation of companies, and say that the senators that were in the room were their representatives and senators now, because somehow the economic development deal also included citizenship, I guess, and the right to vote. I really think that the Arkansas General Assembly needs to think about this. This is not, this is a very logical conclusion to come to. Very logical conclusion. Quote, it covers everything from corn seeds. Listen to this. Christopher Wray, director of the FBI, talking about Chinese espionage, investigations by the FBI in all 50 states. Quote, it covers everything from corn seeds in Iowa to wind turbines in Massachusetts and everything in between. Most of the forum focused on the FBI's investigations of Russia's meddling into the 2016 presidential election and in other arenas. Wray's appearance comes in the wake of two significant indictments in Russia-related investigations. Scroll down here. Let me see if I can get this right. The special counsel's office on Friday indicted 12 Russian military intelligence officers allegedly involved in disseminated emails stolen from former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Wray acknowledged the seriousness of the Russian threat, saying that the U.S. has to deal with it very aggressively. There are certainly other countries that have their own ways of influencing our public opinion, our politicians, our business community, but there's no question that Russia has been by far the most aggressive actor in the space we're talking about right now. But China is trying to position itself as the sole dominant superpower, said Wray. They're trying to replace the United States in that role. I mean, they're communists, but nothing to see here. Let's just continue to do business with them. Sounds great, right? It sounds fantastic. Now, honestly, tell me that you think that this is not a conversation that Arkansas needs to have. Listen, I don't agree with the economic development philosophy at all. Okay, and this is my position. I mean, I don't agree with this picking winners and losers and subsidizing and tax. You're taking an existing Arkansas business owner who's paying taxes. You're taking his money to give it to a competitor that's going to steal away his workers. I mean, that's essentially what we're talking about here. And I think we have a skilled labor crisis here in the state of Arkansas. We don't have enough people to fill these jobs. So, and by the way, they would claim a job would be created out of that. That goes in their numbers. A Chinese company comes here, they're subsidized, they can pay more, they take employees away from the existing Arkansas taxpayer, the existing Arkansas business owner, right? And they'll say, oh, that investment created a job. No, it didn't. You had one guy who was working who's still working. How many of these economic development investments actually result from a guy who's on the couch right now doing nothing in the factory working? Very little, very few. It's a terrible return on the investment when you look at what an actual created job is. Again, the biggest problem that we have is we can't agree on what the definitions of words and phrases are in the, Republican arena. What's a tax cut? Well, we can't even agree on what an actual tax cut is. Revenue neutral, that's a tax cut. No, it's not. Less money going to the government is a tax cut. That relieves the tax burden on the people. Anyway. All right, moving on. So in the context of all this and with Russia, of course, yesterday, President Donald Trump had a cabinet meeting, and some reporter shouted, is Russia still a threat, or is Russia still targeting the United States? And Donald Trump said, no, thank you. According to the reports, he was essentially declining to ask or to take questions. Quote, thank you very much. No, responded Trump. No, you don't believe that to be the case? No, Trump repeated before the questionnaire. So the media takes this story, they run with it, and they say, oh my gosh, can you believe it? And Sarah Huckabee Sanders came out and said he was refusing to answer questions. He wasn't answering that question. The media is absolutely hysterical. The left is hysterical. The Democrats are hysterical. Louis Gutierrez is now calling for the impeachment of Donald Trump over at Breitbart. This is Breitbart's story, because the Putin meeting was, quote, nothing short of treasonous. Democrats, liberals, I think your bar for treason is really low at this point. Really low. Matter of fact, your bar, the Democrat Party and the left and the media's bar for what is treason, they're comparing this to Pearl Harbor. They've compared this to Kristallnacht. These people are unhinged. Your bar for treason is so low that Hillary Clinton would have been convicted for treason 10 times by now. 10 times. Matter of fact, here's an old Newsweek article. that reports on a Fox News interview with Sean Hannity with Sebastian Gorka, essentially saying that this whole, remember the Uranium One thing, and I actually think there's more. If you go on the internet, you can find other allegations against Hillary Clinton and the things she was selling for money in the Clinton Foundation, secrets, possible military secrets, that sort of thing. But the biggest one we know, obviously, is this Uranium One scandal. I mean, you're trading nuclear energy or nuclear substance for money, for speeches. The sale of Uranium One to Russian state-owned nuclear company Rosatom was approved by a 9-agency committee which included Clinton and gave Russia control of 20% of America's uranium reserves. Quote, this is equivalent to what the Rosenbergs did, and those people got the chair, Gorka said. Think about it. Giving away nuclear capabilities to our enemies, that's what we're talking about. Gorka was referencing Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, who were executed by electric chair in June 1953 after they were accused of giving top-secret nuclear weapon designs to the Soviet Union. Quote, this is disgusting, wrote Michael McFaul, who's the former U.S. ambassador to Russia in the Obama administration. That's what he said of Gorka's comments on Twitter. Amazing to remember that this man recently worked in the White House. Okay, my point is this. Having a meeting with Vladimir Putin is now treasonous to the Democrats. Well, then what is this, then? Again, you're setting a very low bar, trying to increase diplomatic relations in public, and now they want to know what the translator needs to be called. You guys are absolutely nuts. You constantly are trying to get the American people to believe that Donald Trump is not the president, that somehow the election wasn't real. You still can't believe that all of your messaging failed. Your attempts to control the majority of the people failed by saying, by reporting the phony poll numbers, by saying he had no chance to win. The mainstream media, by the way, is so responsible for leftists having Trump derangement syndrome. I mean, imagine if you trusted CNN. Imagine if you actually trusted CNN. And for 18 months, you knew that Hillary Clinton was going to be president because that's how they framed the news. That's how they made excuses about any bad news, and they just reported about how terrible and how incompetent and what it's so funny. Donald Trump, isn't he funny? He'll never be president, and then he becomes president. Yeah, I mean, that might put some people in therapy if they are looking to the media for, to verify their existence, and that's a big difference, I think, between conservatives and liberals. A lot of conservatives freaked out with Obama, but not at all like we're seeing now. They went on with their lives. But we have some people whose entire existence, their entire relationships with other people, they can't handle this, and it's just because it's because that as a society we're just getting weaker and weaker and weaker. All right, we've got to take a break. Folks, we got a great show coming up for you. In about an hour, we'll be interviewing Judge Jeanine Pirro, her new book, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals. We'll be back in just a moment.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. I want to introduce you to Mr. Matt Giberson. Matt, welcome to Conduit News Radio. How are you this morning?
I'm all right, Paul. I'm just sucking down some caffeine trying to cope with reality, but I'll get there. Joe really liked that. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do, too. We're trying to cope with reality as well.
Matt, tell us about Free TV. What is Free TV, and what made you want to start this project?
Sure. So Free TV is going to be like a satirical, political social media channel focused on the Libertarian Party in Arkansas, and just trying to give them some credibility that the local news media doesn't seem to be doing.
This is Mother Government. My people. The promised revenue gathering to fund my motherly goals, such as the Arkansas Works, Obamacare, private option has commenced. I have asked my representatives and senators to execute my will concerning new revenues from the tires you use to drive on my roads, the candy and sodas you consume and purchase in my stores, and the digital products you download on my internet. Your sacrifices and tributes, which are owed, display a measure of obedience, but there are still collectible sacrifices I require from the people to increase the work and size of our great government of Arkansas. There are two matters left unresolved. 1. I require a general tribute for all purchases made on my internet. Not just digital products, but all products. My dear children, there are those who would thwart my motherly goals of progress. If you see them, please combat their misguided notions of freedom by using phrases like mom and pop, and tax cheat. 2. I still require more revenue sacrifices concerning your consumption of my gasoline. I require your undying loyalty on the subject. Subjects, in conclusion. More revenue is good. Static revenue is bad. This message was brought to you by your stewards, aristocrats serving Arkansas. Thank you, my children, in advance for your required and expected obedience that keeps society safe and prosperous. And always remember, from cradle to grave.
PHP Parody. The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, just a little quick reminder. Want to bring in a carefully crafted language segment here. This phrase, carefully crafted language, is something that was developed based on what Governor Asa Hutchinson said early on as the governor back in 2015. He was trying to find a way to keep Medicaid. We now know all of this. He was trying to find a way to keep Obamacare Medicaid expansion in Arkansas, but change the name and weave a very, very delicate line of being critical of the program, but also loving it to keep the insurance companies happy and their huge $2 billion a year windfall they get from the taxpayer. And he was asked a tough question about this, his speech that he gave back in 2015, and he didn't really want to answer that question. He just wanted to refer everybody back to his statements. This is what it sounded like. He said this.
I want to refer everybody back to my remarks because that's the key language that was carefully crafted.
So we've kind of taken that over the years, and we've noticed that there's a lot of carefully crafted language, not just from Asa Hutchinson, but from politicians in general. This is how they maybe use words, phrases, definitions of, things that they use words. We'll have different definitions, but they use the same words, and they use that to amass power, or they use that to get out of difficult situations. One such difficult situation has to do with Governor Asa Hutchinson. Recently, the governor was asked about the minimum wage and the efforts to get a ballot initiative, an amendment on the ballot this November where we would vote to increase the minimum wage yet again here in Arkansas. Now, I've gone over how the minimum wage is a joke and it's not conservative economic policy to advocate such, but the governor here has to kind of, again, carefully craft his language because he was for increasing the minimum wage 4 years ago when he ran for governor. This was his statement to the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. See if you can hear the carefully crafted language. Over the past 3.5 years, we've created 70,000 new jobs, and wage rates are going up. We need to be striving for this kind of wage increase through private sector growth and a more competitive tax code that produces more and better paying jobs in Arkansas. The governor added in his statement that he supports increasing the minimum wage, but that such efforts should be passed through the legislature. He supports increasing the minimum wage, but that such efforts should be left to the legislature, not the people, not the ballot. Folks, that is an example of carefully crafted language. If you see any carefully crafted language in the political sphere, send it to us. We'd love to cover it.
just kind of birthed out of me being tired of being just angry about politics. I want to actually do something about it. And so, I just took some time and thought about my talents, my skill sets, and prayed about it. And I really feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Awesome. So tell us about your talents. Let's just show some of your talents. This is your first episode. It's up on the YouTube channel. Again, free TV. Go ahead and show this, Joe, and we'll get Matt's response.
I'm Whit Hyman, and I approve this message.
Wearing that Patriots of Act 746 hat. Yep, and then you get the logo, and then, of course, the interview starts. All right, so Matt, tell us a little bit about, does everybody that interviews with you that's a libertarian get to go out and shoot guns like that?
Oh, I mean, it doesn't. See, the thing is, it doesn't just have to be libertarians. I'm hoping to get everybody on there because
Okay.
I want free TV to be a voice of the people. But I myself am a libertarian, and I feel like, as a libertarian, we have an obligation to be willing to at least hear good arguments from good local politicians. It doesn't mean we have to vote for them, but yes, the prerequisite to being on the show will be to go to the gun range with them.
Okay, good. Well, I think that's kind of a good
It'll
test.
filter out the chaff from the wheat. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so did you train for this? I mean, what's some of your background?
Well, I'm a Bible college graduate. Well, I'm a high school dropout who went to Bible college and graduated. And, after doing ministry for a few years, I won an essay contest with Dove Men Plus Care, chosen out of 20,000 applicants to win $5,000 to be my own boss and start my own business. So I had already started working on a business project with a guy, so that just kind of put the accelerator on, and we opened Mugshots Express, the coffee shop in Hot Springs, Arkansas, back in 2014. I sold it to my business partner the next year, and it's taken off and done great. They've just opened their second location in Malvern, and I stepped away from a few years. It was a wild ride, that experience, and chose to pretty much just live under a rock. I got rid of my television, I got rid of my smartphone, and just chose to focus on my family. And after about 3 years of stepping aside, I just felt like it was time to step back into business, and I've chosen media. And
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
870-275-9799. Taking a look at this, did you know that there was a campaign contribution that was returned from a nursing home lobbyist? And this is interesting. How often does that ever happen where a politician's like, no, thank you? It doesn't happen very often. This headline over at Conduit for Action is interesting. Nursing homes and the ongoing investigations into elected officials. So the FBI has been running around Arkansas for several years now. And we've had some indictments. We've had some guilty pleas. We think there's more to come, but you never know what can be said or done or what pressure can be applied. And to make sure that doesn't happen, to make sure the right people are protected. Here's the thing, in my opinion, and this is just a healthy American skepticism we should all have, but people in positions of power, if they can, they're going to fight to stay in power. And if that means pulling out all the stops, I think human nature suggests the question is, why would you do that? No, the question, why wouldn't you do it if you could? It's the whole basis of my whole basis and logic surrounding the potential surveillance state that we have and using this technology against political opponents. It's not why would you. if you understand human nature, if you give one person that kind of power, the question is, why wouldn't you? And now we know that that's the case when you see what happened with President Trump and the unmasking of people in his campaign and the phony FISA court, the secret covert committee that is a FISA court, and the how that process was abused and how it was all relying on a dossier paid for by the Democrats. Anyway, I digress. The point is, when you get into a position of power, you will try to protect that power, and you will use resources. I think it's safe to say most will use their resources to try to stop the people knowing something that might result in you losing power. Well, there's a lot of FBI investigations going on in the state of Arkansas, and I think this state is so corrupt, it makes Cook County, Illinois look pretty good. That's what I think. Governor Asa Hutchinson received a campaign contribution from nursing home owner Michael Morton. Now, who is Michael Morton, ladies and gentlemen? Michael Morton is a nursing home owner. He was implicated in bribing Judge Mike Maggio, but nothing ever happened to him. Here's the thing. The governor refunded the contribution. Not many campaign contributions get returned, so why this one? Well, it's because Michael Morton is you don't want to be affiliated with him. See, there's a lot of guilty pleas, but a lot of guilty pleas going on. But one of the first guilty pleas was Mike Maggio. He pled guilty to bribery, admitting lowering a judgment against a nursing home in the death of a resident in exchange for campaign contributions made indirectly to his election campaign for election to the Arkansas Court of Appeals. Maggio's plea says the contributions were made by an individual through an intermediary. So you have individual A and individual B. Individual A is Michael Morton, who is the owner of the nursing home in question. Individual B would be lobbyist and former legislator Gilbert Baker. Both Morton and Baker assert they have not done anything wrong. Again, both Morton and Baker say they haven't done anything wrong. Well, then why is Mike Maggio sitting in jail? He is in jail right now. The saying goes, it takes two to tango, but as it stands now, that's not the case. I mean, in Arkansas, that doesn't apply. It takes two to tango, but as it stands, although Maggio pled guilty to bribery, there have been no charges brought against a briber. Are charges still being considered? Well, who knows? Who knows? The question is asked, was Mike Maggio mistaken about accepting a bribe or being bribed? And did Mike Maggio go to jail for nothing? Think about that for a second. If you're Mike Maggio, you think you're a little upset right now, sitting in jail. You claim you were bribed, and yet nothing's happened to anybody else. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, from what I know about Mike Maggio, just in the reports and the stuff that I've seen, I mean, he doesn't. Maybe he was mistaken. Maybe he wasn't bribed. Then you get to Michael Morton's business partner. Michael Morton's business partner is a guy by the name of David Norsworthy. He shot to fame in conservatives' mind, if you've been listening to Conduit News, last year when it was discovered that Norsworthy gave Senator Jake Files, now convicted Senator Jake Files, of $80,000 wire transfer to Senator Files' business back in 2014. This was a week after he filed SJR 1 of 2015, which failed, but it was a proposed constitutional amendment that was going to reduce the liability of nursing homes and others, very much like the bad tort reform amendment we're having to vote on this November that's going to give the legislature the ability to set rules of evidence in a courtroom. It's going to cap damages, and it's going to limit what attorneys can make in a class action lawsuit. Now, listen, folks, I mean, come on. I wouldn't support any legislation that told me how much I could charge for an ad. on a radio, for a radio ad. Why would you want to cap what somebody can make? Doesn't make any sense. But more importantly, I know what goes on in Little Rock. And it's very clear at this point, if you look at the headlines and the corruption, we're still living in the shadow of Bill Clinton. We're still living in a bureaucracy that almost put not one but two Clintons in the White House and began their political career, and now they're arguably one of the most political, powerful families in the world. That started right here in our own backyard, and we need to change that. We've been voting for Republicans, but they haven't done it. They keep coming back with excuses. But we've been voting for reform because we wanted to change the way things were done in this state and still haven't gotten the results that we want yet. Because we got stuff like this going on. David Norsworthy. Here's $80,000, Jake Files, after you filed what I wanted you to file. Now, back in January of this year, Senator Files pled guilty to wire fraud, money laundering, and bank fraud. But the specific charge of this $80,000 was not part of what he pled guilty to, which led the prosecuting attorney, Daniel Shue, asked the federal prosecutor to look into the matter to see if any federal laws were broken. And then Shue requested a special prosecutor, which has been appointed. There's now a special prosecutor investigating Jake Files and David Norsworthy in this $80,000 wire transfer that was discovered in a separate lawsuit. I believe it was a bank lawsuit because the bank was trying to get some of their property or their money back because we're talking about, I think, defaulting on the home. It was a big home. You remember that? You remember Jake Files' home? What was that? I mean, it was millions of dollars. It was a giant mansion. Remember that? But here's the funny thing. He had two Fs for Files that were like back to back, like a shrubbery. He had two Fs, two shrubs that were cut into two Fs. But from an aerial view, it looked like a swastika. It did. It looked like it was so weird. It's like you need to focus on your right angles. That one of those F's just didn't quite look right. I'm sure it was a lawn care mistake. Morton and the nursing home industry then financially supported an effort to gather signatures to get a similar constitutional amendment on the ballot and to promote the passage of the amendment. After spending big bucks on the proposal shortly before the 2016 election, the Arkansas Supreme Court said the ballot title on the amendment did not give voters enough information and they threw it off. Their efforts continued, and in 2017, the legislature approved a proposal to limit liability. Again, SJR 8, the Bad Tort Reform Amendment, that we're going to be voting on this November. The constitutional amendment will be on the ballot. In addition to making contributions to candidates and spending money to promote liability-limiting ballot issues, Michael Morton is, or has been, providing financial support to the one blogger who writes numerous articles supporting the proposal. The nursing home industry is a strong political power to be reckoned with, and politicians ignore the lobby at their own risk. Whether Morton, Norsworthy, or anyone else in the nursing home industry crossed the line into prohibited conduct remains to be seen. If we were skeptical, which we are, we might wonder if the answers will be delayed until after the November election in order not to influence the outcome of Issue 1, meaning nothing to see here. Only in Arkansas do you have a judge that pleads guilty to bribery for lowering the judgment on the nursing home. Only in Arkansas do you have the nursing home owner's partner send another guy $80,000 to try to get special interest nursing home legislation, essentially. Call it tort reform, but it's really a way to save nursing homes money and everything else. Only in Arkansas. Then in 2017, after we at least know about the bribery thing and the judge, do you get somehow Republicans to go along with a tort reform scheme that is specifically for nursing homes? And it's just like, do you have no shame? Do you not see? And it's because they think you will never find out about it. I'm convinced of that. They think that you'll never figure it out. You'll never find out about it. Only in Arkansas does this kind of stuff happen. listen, and I know this happens other places. What I mean by that is I wish people would take, just because we have elected a bunch of Republicans doesn't mean Arkansas's reputation is suddenly changed and it's different. Okay, just because we've changed T-shirts from blue to red doesn't mean all of a sudden magically everything is okay. People like to pretend that it is, but it isn't. I mean, honestly, the easy part was convincing the people of Arkansas that Democrats didn't represent them. Issue by issue, go down the list. You're more in line with the Republican platform. That was easy compared to having to expose now the officials at the top of the party, the people who are in power, who keep coming back to the voters with all these excuses, and who have, they're all in on this. They're in on this, or they're just complicit in it. I mean, that just, you know what I mean? Like, well, we don't need. I know this guy's corrupt, but he votes the way we need him to vote on these other issues, and so we don't need a guy that's not loyal to the system in there. If everybody has something on everybody else, I'm sure it's quite a happy little harem, right? I mean, everybody's okay because everybody's got something, and it makes you feel better. The status quo is protected. It's maintained. It's been that way here for a while. The phone number, 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. We were also broadcasting over at Facebook.com/Conduit News, as well as the YouTube channel, Conduit News. Hey, feel free, if you go to the YouTube channel, please, when you go to the YouTube channel, subscribe to us, but click the little bell to receive notifications. It helps us, and we want to get as many followers as we can so we can be discriminated against for being conservatives. That is our goal. Okay, so yesterday on the program, we had State Representative Mark Lowry here. State Representative Mark Lowry was here, and he called into the program, and he made some news because he asked, after the Joint Performance Review Committee hearing on Tuesday, he was so dismayed, and I think anybody who listened to the interview would agree that he was dismayed and just very discouraged about the whole process. He asked for George Hopkins, the head of the Arkansas teacher retirement system, to resign, to step down. Has to do with a class action lawsuit in which the Arkansas teacher retirement system was the lead plaintiff. They won a $300 million judgment. $75 million of that goes to legal fees, and $4.1 million of that $75 million went to another lawyer for a referral fee, which has got a lot of people asking questions. One of those questions goes to George Hopkins, and the question of whether or not he knew about the $4.1 million. Apparently, according now to the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, as they report on this morning, the answer is no. State Representative Mark Lowry does not believe that he didn't know about the $4.1 million fee. So Mark Lowry calling for his resignation, but you have the state auditor Andrea Lee, standing by him, as well as the state treasurer Dennis Milligan standing by George Hopkins. It's quite interesting. Matter of fact, the news that Mark Lowry broke on the program yesterday did not go unnoticed by the Gazette. Skipping down here, Mark Lowry told the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette on Tuesday that whether Hopkins should resign is up to the system's Board of Trustees. Then he had a change of heart on Wednesday morning and called for Hopkins' resignation while speaking on conservative talk radio host Paul Harrell's show on Conduit News Radio. State Representative Doug House, a Republican from North Little Rock, who is co-chairman of the Retirement Committee, said Wednesday that Hopkins' testimony that Hopkins didn't know about the referral fees paid to Chargos, and it lacks credibility. Well, listen to this. But House said he doesn't have an opinion on whether Hopkins should resign because Hopkins works for the system's Board of Trustees and House holds the trustees responsible. Hopkins has been the teacher retirement system's executive director since December of 2008, and his state salary is $180,108 a year. He is a former Democratic state senator from Malvern, who served as co-chairman on the Joint Committee on Public Retirement and Social Security Programs. As for Lowry's call for his resignation, Hopkins said in a written statement, quote, "I would respond that Arkansas teacher retirement system had the #1 investment return of any public pension plan in the United States in 2017, end quote." Let's stop right there. What a statement. A guy's asking you to resign because of the appearance of impropriety, the appearance of corruption, because the judge in Massachusetts that was handling this case is wondering what happened to the $4.1 million. Who did it go to? I mean, you're talking about a very small law firm getting a huge chunk of change here. Who did it go to? We have an email that talks about favors and inconsiderable time spent in Arkansas complaining about compensation for the referral fee, that they're not getting enough, and then they get $4.1 million. It's very strange, okay? But what a statement. I mean, what are they saying here? George Hopkins says, in response to Mark Lowry's call for him to step down, he says, hey, we got the #1 return on our investment. So if we later find... Hear me out. If we later find that there is solid proof of something that has gone wrong here, corruption, impropriety, whatever, is the excuse, well, that's just part of doing business. We've got the #1. You got to grease the skids a little bit. We've got the #1 investment plan in the country. What are you talking about? Yeah. I know we had to pay this guy and pay that guy, but hey, that's just part of doing business. You think... Something tells me that wouldn't hold up. If, in fact, there is something really bad going on here. Quote, during my tenure, he goes on, George Hopkins, during my tenure as executive director over the 3- and 5-year periods, the investment return on the Arkansas teacher retirement system has been in the top 1% of all public pension plans in the nation, Hopkins said. Any successful system can be better, and I appreciate the positive suggestions the committee made for all Arkansas public retirement systems. I will be recommending to the board implementation of the committee's suggestions where applicable to Arkansas teacher retirement. However, nothing in the special master's extensive report or any statement made in the over 3-hour meeting even came close to supporting the conclusion Mr. Lowry is suggesting. Well, he doesn't believe you, sir. George, he doesn't believe you. You say you didn't know about the $4.1 million? He doesn't believe you. I mean, that's, sometimes you just don't make a good impression. First impressions are everything when you're talking about this. And, I mean, you know what Mark Lowry said on the program yesterday? He said, we'll just leave this to the FBI. I mean, that's where this has got to go next, is we've got to have people now investigating what really went on, because I don't believe George Hopkins. We're going to take a break. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. We have Judge Janine Pirro coming up at 7:33. We'll be back in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Marketing and politics to do it. This business project is in conjunction with another business that I've just started called Mind Gap Media, and it's a social media marketing agency for local businesses.
Wow, man, that does sound like a wild ride. And so we're looking right now, for those of you watching the program over at Conduit News or Facebook.com/Conduit News or YouTube, we're playing episode 1 in the background of this interview with Mr. Whitfield Hyman, who was on the program yesterday. But so do you have some other episodes coming though, right? You've got other interviews lined up.
Oh yeah, I've already got an interview with Mark West done. Him and I are scheduling a time to go shoot. I've got, Tom Canada, Joe Swafford, Frank Hill.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, coming up at the top of this hour, we have the Conduit Fraction quiz that Joe is going to... What'd you make last week, Joe? Remember? You made a C. 72% is what Joe made last week. This week's quiz is on tax collections.
Oh, just pick the highest number you win.
Joe says... Joe hasn't looked at the quiz because we don't let him do that. Or it's the honor system, really. Joe just says, pick the highest number. That's what he says. He says so his speculation is that if you just pick the highest number, if it's going to be a quiz on record tax collections, that you should just do fine. Now, a couple of weeks ago, this whiteboard, which right now says free press, which the free press doesn't seem like it's so free. It seems like it's totally controlled, and seems like a lot of these anchors think that they. It's their job to manipulate you, not just to give you the news. Right? I mean, I give you the news, but at least I tell you, hey, I'm a conservative. They try to act like they're, objective or something. And that's not, they're not, I mean, they're free to mislead you, I guess. Anyway. And they're beholden to special interests. Anyway, but a couple of weeks ago, the board said record revenue instead of free press. It said record revenue, and that's because the state of Arkansas last fiscal year took a record amount of your money, and yet we still have no good highways. We still don't have money for highways. They still want to raise your taxes. They still want to create new tributaries of taxpayer money that flows to the Marble Palace in Little Rock. Every year we can't come up with the highway money. I mean, every year it's some sort of manufactured crisis where we don't have the money to come up to get the federal match to, get the access to those federal funds to build our roads. Yeah, I know we could talk all about the idea of the federal government taking our money and then sending it back to us with strings attached, but that's a whole other argument for an entirely different time. My point is this: if the state of Arkansas's tax policies are taking a record amount of money from us, and yet we still don't have enough money for roads, and they still want to raise your taxes, whether it's the wholesale price of gas and diesel or adding a sales tax to gas. They've talked about that, right? They consider the fact that gasoline is exempt from sales taxes, even though there's already a gas tax on it. It's just a gas tax and not a sales tax. If they could double tax it, they would. If they could double tax it and you not find out about it, they would. Or they tax it at the wholesale, which of course gets passed on to the consumer and you pay more at the pump. At some point, and again, the Conduit Fraction quiz is about record tax collections. You can take it with us if you'd like. We're going to be taking it here in about 7 minutes. At some point, we get to say to the government, we're already giving you the money to do these things, and you're not doing them. What priorities? We all agree on roads, right? We want to drive on roads that are smooth, and you have the Arkansas State Police reminding us not to drive in the left lane unless you're passing. If you drive in the right lane, your tires get torn up, though. Right? My goodness. we're already giving you money to do things. So what are the other priorities that we're spending this money on? And you would have to look at these welfare programs, not for the truly needy, but for able-to-work adults. Spending a lot of money on that stuff. Not on roads, though.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk, 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Over Michael Kalagius. Man, I mean, I've too many people. I've talked to Drew. Well, no, I haven't talked to Drew Tanner yet, but I've talked to several people who are already in lined up to do this with me. I'm filled up till at least November.
Mm-hmm. Well, so tell me about libertarians. Now, you say you'll talk to anybody because you're not afraid of ideas, and I think that's really powerful stuff. But I mean, what about? I mean, are you yourself a libertarian? I guess.
I'm a new libertarian. I have not really chosen a political party ever, and so I've realized that at a certain point I'd have to get behind something, and I feel like while most of the average citizen may claim a political party, they're probably a libertarian and don't even realize it. And the only reason they don't realize it is because the media hasn't given them an opportunity to realize it. Because if enough people wake up to the power of the third party, they're going to jump ship. And so this project is all about just giving people I'm giving libertarians a product that they can share with everybody else that they know that will get them to at least avail themselves to libertarian ideas.
And I think that's really, really healthy. I'm reading some of the comments on Facebook. Amy writes, pick me, pick me. We have people that want to be interviewed, I think, just because. What kind of gun is that? What kind of gun in that video that we just saw?
Oh, man, shooting? I think that's a G36. I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure. Those were not my firearms. I have an AR-15, but it is nothing like what we were firing. But we've talked to the folks down at Thor Global Defense Group, and they've been willing to work with us. We pay the range fee, and they give us it's BYOB, bring your own bullets, but they'll give us the full autos to shoot. And whenever we schedule this. But I'll tell you what, for people that are wanting to be on the show, the number one thing that they can do that will help me, because this is meant to be a voice for the people, is you can search me on any social media platform, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, with the tag @FreeLibertyTV, or you can email me at freelibertytv@gmail.com and send me a correspondence clip. Honestly, I want people to start sending me 1 to 2 minute clips of their stories, things going on in their area, and if it's funny, if I like it, I'm going to air it on my episode.
It's at Free Liberty TV. We're updating the graphic here on the website. We want to make sure. So that's your Twitter, and that's also is that Instagram and other outlets too? You said.
Yeah, pretty much any of them. You can just type at Free Liberty TV. I managed to stumble across that name and hasn't been taken in any of them. So
good.
I have a website, freelibertytv.com, but there's nothing up there yet. I've just been so busy with, all the other business aspects.
Well, I really hope the YouTube channel takes off for you, Matt. I really do. If I can keep you just a little bit longer, I would love to know. You said you're a new libertarian. I would love to know. Yeah. You also said that you went to Bible college. You also said I'm curious. Were you always politically minded? When you were in the ministry, or was it secondary? Yeah. Was it the same? What has there been a journey there at all?
Yeah, there has. So my mom spent 16 years in Navy intelligence. So she's ruined, and ever since high school, watching the news with her was always a trip, because she would know. She knew how to look at things, past the spin. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of how I was raised. And then, all through Bible college, I went to it was a King James independent fundamental Baptist. It was as close to military as Bible college could be. And so it was a very conservative thing and a place. And, that coupled with, my upbringing with my mom made it really hard for me to embrace the whole patriotic Christianity, like assuming that America is like God's gift to the world and that we can act however we want because of it.
God's kingdom. God's kingdom is God's kingdom, and America's America. They're not the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. But embracing the idea that America is God's kingdom, even though it's not. So I know that. I don't know how to explain it. Basically.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Welcome to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being with us today. This is hour number 2. Coming up at 7:33, we'll be interviewing Judge Jeanine Pirro on her new book, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals. And that book, by the way, came out on Tuesday. So you can go to Amazon and get it. For real, though, you're going to want to stick around and hear this interview because obviously it's Judge Jeanine Pirro, and her show is just really, really factual, fantastic, and always full of energy. And so very excited to have her on and the opportunity to interview her. Listen to that. I guess it's time for the weekly Conduit for Action quiz over at conduitforaction.org. This week's quiz has to do with Arkansas fiscal years and how they run from July 1st to July 1st. While the Department of Finance and Administration issues monthly revenue reports for the state, the final year-end report at the beginning of July each year gives the full picture of how much tax revenue the state took from the people. Recently, DF&A released their year-end report for fiscal year 2018. This report shows that Arkansas brought in a record amount of revenue. This means the state brought in more money out of the pocketbooks of Arkansans than ever before because of the high tax rates in this state. Let's take the quiz, shall we?
You gotta wait for the song to be over.
I know. Every week we got to do this. So this quiz highlights the fiscal year 2018 report. It dives into how much the state took in and from what types of taxes the state brought in record revenue. All right, so our quiz taker every week is our board operator, Joe. You see him on the screen there. Question number 1. How much did Arkansas state government bring in for gross tax collections for fiscal year 2018? Now, I've
already told the audience my strategy here.
What is your strategy on this particular quiz?
Just pick the highest number. If it's applicable to pick the highest number.
Okay.
And you automatically got 100%.
So your options here are 3.5 billion, 5.8 billion, or 6.7 billion. So
$6.7
you're going with the highest number. All right, so I'm sorry. I think this is funny. I don't necessarily know the answers. So, all right, question number 2: how much of an increase did the state of Arkansas bring in for gross tax collections from fiscal 2017 to fiscal year 2018? Was it 1.3 million, or 0.1% increase, 55 million, or 0.8% increase, or 174.7 million, a 2.7% increase?
I'm pretty sure the digital downloads tax alone brought you more than 55 million.
I don't know, honestly. I'm just an arbiter. Do you need some music to think about it, though?
No, I'm good.
You don't need?
No, I don't.
Sure?
I don't need music.
Well, what are you going with then?
I'm just 174.
You're going with the highest one?
Yeah, at 2.7%.
Okay. All right. Well, tell us about, let's see, question number 3. How much did Arkansas state government bring in from individual income taxes for fiscal year 2018? $1.7 billion, $2.4 billion, or $3.4 billion?
I know what my answer is going to be, but I'll have time. I got to answer.
That sound means you're out of time, Joe.
$3.4 billion.
Going with the highest number here, okay?
That's the strategy here.
I know.
It's
I hope it works out for you.
It's like taking the ACT and putting C on everything.
Mm-hmm. I hope it works out for you. I really do.
Me too.
Question number 3. Question number 4, right? We're on 4 now. How much of an increase did the state of Arkansas bring in from individual income taxes from fiscal year 2017 to fiscal year 2018? Was it a 0.9% increase of $12.3 million, a 2.8% increase of $74 million, or a 4.5% increase, $144 million?
$144 million.
Okay, going with the highest number again. How much did Arkansas state government bring in from corporate income taxes for fiscal year 2018? Was it $213 million, $301 million, $406 million? Those are your options. Now, remember, the corporate income tax is, well, let me just say this. After we get the results of this, I'll have a few things to say about the corporate income tax in relation to Arkansas's economic development strategy with the Chinese.
That we shouldn't have one.
Well, we talked about this last hour, the hypocrisy. Can you imagine if we were recruiting Russian businesses into the state the way Asa Hutchinson recruits Chinese businesses? The FBI director, Christopher Wray, yesterday said that China has espionage activities going on in all 50 states, and the FBI has investigations in all 50 states.
Arkansas would make headlines across the country.
You know, it would.
How dare you?
It's interesting. It's interesting that we are so concerned with Russia, but we don't care anything about China. It's strange that we want Russia for some reason to be the boogeyman. Okay. Anyway, what are you going with? You going with
406?
406 million. Okay. Question number 6. How much of a decrease did the state of Arkansas bring in from corporate income taxes from fiscal 2017 to fiscal 2018?
So this is, you got to keep for those of you
might
watching and listening.
Yeah.
This is one you got to keep an eye on. When they say decrease, you pick the lowest one.
Okay.
You pick the lowest one.
If you say so.
Because they don't want to give up any more than they have to.
If you say so. All right, so you're going the question: $3 million, $18 million, or $27 million decrease. You think it's a $3 million decrease?
Yes.
I hope your strategy works out. I also hope you don't just completely bomb this.
If I bomb it, then the person who makes these quizzes, who knows my tendency in this situation, really got me.
Yeah.
Really got me. And I'm looking at you right now. You know who you are.
How much did Arkansas state government bring in from sales and use taxes for fiscal year 2018? $954 million, $1.2 billion, or $2.4 billion? How much did Arkansas state?
Okay, yeah, sales tax.
Sales and use tax in fiscal 2018. $2.4 billion.
2.4.
Okay. Question number 8. How much of an increase did the state of Arkansas bring in from sales and use taxes from fiscal year 2017 to fiscal year 2018? Was it $11 million, $58 million, or $79 million?
That nice 3.4%.
You're going with the high $79 million. The strategy. Question number 9. Since Arkansas brought in record revenue for fiscal year 2018, how much did Arkansas return to the taxpayer?
I'm so tempted.
$27 million, $7 million, or zero?
I'm so tempted to say $0.
Well, I think your strategy falls apart here, but that's just me.
It's slowly falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
You just need to relax. Just feel the groove. Yep. Now, what is it? Does our government care about giving the people back money? That's the real question.
Okay.
Not so sure.
I do have a question now, like a legitimate question. Is it? I'm going to assume not, but I'm still going to ask the question. Does this include tax returns?
That sound means we're out of time. You know what? I can't help you here. I'm not your first grade teacher. I can't come over your shoulder.
Whoa. This is college. This is not first grade.
We're going to need an answer. $27 million, $7 million, or zero?
I'm going with my gut. Going with zero.
Zero.
Going with $0.
Okay. So question 10 is if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to Conduit for Action emails. And then question 11, ask what town you live in. And so Joe's going to hit submit, and we're going to get the answers of this quiz and see what happens. Mm-hmm. I have a feeling.
88.9%.
Whoa!
Almost a 90. Almost an A.
88.9%. So Joe's strategy.
I was one shy of 100%.
Joe's strategy. So he misses
Which one did I get
one.
wrong?
He misses. Which one did you miss?
This one.
So the one you missed. Let's scroll up here. Let me see this. What question was it? What
How
number?
much of a decrease? I didn't go with the highest one.
Question
Didn't go with my
6.
strategy.
Well, so check this out. So question 6, how much of a decrease did the state of Arkansas bring in corporate income tax from fiscal 2017 to fiscal 18? It was a $3 million decrease or a $1.5 million decrease. You selected the high number, 27.
No. I selected the 3
Oh,
million.
right. I'm sorry.
It was 27
Yeah,
million.
I'm sorry. I got that
was
reversed.
6.3%.
You selected the low. It's actually the high. So
Yeah.
$27 million decrease.
Didn't go with my strategy
Now,
on one question.
That's a big deal that our corporate income taxes decreased $27 million, or 6.3%. What if we got rid of the corporate income tax altogether? They had record revenue even with that decrease. If you quit giving money away to Chinese companies, trying to recruit them here, it's essentially a wash if you look at the numbers. If you were to stop your Arkansas Economic Development Commission and you were to just eliminate the corporate income tax altogether here in Arkansas, you would treat all businesses equally compared with that particular tax, these corporations, and you'd have to stop trying to recruit China in here, which I think is a big deal anyway. And even though I disagree with picking winners and losers, I also disagree with who you're giving the money to.
Yeah.
I mean, Donald Trump criticized NATO and Germany for making Russia rich and expecting the U.S. to protect. And we're doing the same thing. We're in an economic war with China. They're annexing the South China Sea, and we're making China rich.
It's kind of like a
somehow.
kid yelling for mom, 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 mom. Brother's beating me up and handing the kid the baseball bat to beat him up with.
Exactly. That's exactly what we're doing. That's our economic philosophy right now. And again, can you imagine if we were recruiting Russian businesses in here the way we're recruiting Chinese businesses? See, I don't think Asa would do that, but he's more than happy to do it with China. I just want to know why. You know, I just want to know why the double standard. Tell me where I'm wrong here.
And why choose China?
Why the double standard?
Why China of all places?
Well, I mean, it's because they do have a large economy. They do have all this money, but they're communists, and they look at their citizens and they say, "I like you. You're part of the right family. You get a business. You don't get a business. You get to own a business. You don't get to own a business." I mean, you know, they're communists. This is what they are. So, I mean, why are we going to give our money to them and let them come and take our resources, make products, and then sell them back to us? Come on, man. Not to mention the big news today about this, the Daily Caller article that the FBI director who said yesterday, Christopher Wray, said that China is the biggest threat that this country faces. Why are we giving China our money? Why are local counties making land deals here in Arkansas with Chinese companies saying you don't have to pay your property tax for X amount of years? Why is this the chief economic strategy? Why is China our chief economic strategy here in Arkansas? It doesn't make me feel very safe. It doesn't make me feel like this is what we need to do. Not to mention, and Conduit for Action had a great article about this last year, you're also doing business with a country that is persecuting Christians. That's ripping down, destroying churches because the gospel is so offensive to them over there. That's another problem I think we have between the two countries. Now, look, I know we do business with countries, as you know, the United States does business with countries that we disagree with or maybe have bad human rights or violations or whatever. I understand that. I get that. Some of that is unavoidable. But the governor is actively traveling to China to recruit these businesses, and he's using your taxpayer dollars to do it, and he's promising them your taxpayer dollars. And again, I think this fits well with the record revenue that the state is taking from the people. We still don't have highways, and we still don't have good roads, and we don't have the money for them. We don't have the money for highways. We don't have the money for good roads, yet they're taking a record amount of revenue from us. What are we spending it on? Well, We are spending it on trips to China. We are spending it on, future obligations of promising tax incentives and quick action closing fund and, money that going. We are doing that as well. I really wonder, honestly, and I don't know this, but I wonder what President Donald Trump honestly thinks of this. A lot of these deals happened before they were in the works, well before Donald Trump became president. Well before his America First MAGA agenda was more well-known and becoming more accepted, getting more traction. A lot of this happened before all of that. And the governor has been quoted in the paper as saying that his economic policy, his deals with China don't conflict with the MAGA agenda. Well, I let's just say this. We know for sure that the governor hopes that is the case. Why wouldn't he? He's worked and put all of his energy towards this particular path. So, but what if we were recruiting Russian businesses? Russia annexes Crimea. China is in the South China Sea, creating islands that we have a problem with. Our allies have a problem with. Still can't get over the fact that the Democrat Party didn't want Donald Trump to even meet with Vladimir Putin. Why? Why is it? Why do you think they didn't want Donald Trump to meet with Vladimir Putin? Why did they try everything they could? Why did the deep state and Mueller release those indictments 3 days before the meeting was supposed to take place, saying, well, you know what, Trump, if you're going to have this meeting, we're going to make it as hard on you as possible? Why? Why did they do that? Why did they not want this meeting to take place? It's interesting. We'll see what happens in the next 24-hour news cycle. Every time the media goes after Trump, it seems like they lose. Am I wrong here? It seems like every time they go after him, every time the deep state sets these nets, these traps, so far, this may not happen forever, but for so far, they've fallen into their own traps. They fall into their own nets. It's been very interesting to watch. We've got to take a break. We're going to be back here in just a moment, and then coming up at 7:33, we'll be interviewing Judge Janine Pirro. Always excited to have big guests like this. Her book, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals, back in just a moment.
That just opened me up to the realization that, the world is a really big place. And, yeah, America is a great country, and so because of that, we have responsibilities that come with the freedoms and things like that we enjoy. Freedom. The American dream is that freedom is possible, not that it would be easy.
Mm-hmm. That's
and
really
so
cool.
that's the things that have led me to be a libertarian.
Wow. Yeah, I can. I certainly I identify. That's fantastic. So we're talking with Matt Giberson. It's at Free Liberty TV. Look him up and go to the YouTube channel. Check out these episodes. One more question, Matt, if you don't mind. What do you think is maybe some of the some of your biggest issues, so some of the biggest problems, or some of the biggest things that you would like to see fixed? When it comes to the status quo now versus where you would maybe want to see the state of Arkansas go, or the national government go. What are some of your biggest issues out there?
Sure.
Do you need conservative legislation killed?
Or do you need policies enacted that ensure government growth?
Then you need to get
Nephewed. Hi, I'm nephew number 1 of uncle, nephew, and nephew, attorneys at law. I'm not a lawyer, but I am a senator.
And I'm nephew number 2, and I am a lawyer and also a senator.
Are you the victim of a recent accident in which the voters in your community mistakenly elected a limited government conservative who is now actually implementing the ideas he or she campaigned on?
That's right, nephew number 1. Don't be a victim of democratic elections any longer. At Uncle, Nephew, and Nephew, we are committed to killing limited government legislation and promoting bills that increase the size of government by using any tool at our disposal.
Because sometimes the truth of the matter is, principles get in the way of pragmatism.
Just listen to some of our great testimonials.
Ever since I've been using the nephews, all my special interests have been served. As long as you make sure your contract says lobbying services are prohibited, then the legal services of uncle, nephew, and nephew are legal. Trust me, put the nephews on them.
It came out of nowhere. I was blindsided last election cycle when my well-funded and paid-for politician lost to some grassroots limited government voters. But then I hired the nephews, and they killed all the conservative policies the voters wanted. I got nephewed.
I got nephewed too, and so can you.
Uncle, nephew, and nephew will accept compensation via campaign contributions.
Put the nephews on them.
PHP Parody.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Still no word on from the governor on whether or not. Well, I guess the governor has said that his nephew Jeremy Hutchinson doesn't need to resign because, well, he alluded to the fact in calling for State Representative Mickey Gates to resign because he hasn't paid his taxes. He said, but it's different. My nephew Jeremy, it's all rumor essentially. I'm paraphrasing, but it was suggested that the federal court documents that allege that Rusty Cranford bribed Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, $500,000 via preferred family health care. Well, it's just rumor, and no one's been indicted yet, so he doesn't need to resign yet. Yeah. That's the status of that. One of the things we didn't really pay enough attention to is question 9 on the quiz. Question 9 on the quiz we were just going over. Since Arkansas brought in a record amount of revenue for fiscal year 2018, which again runs from July 1 to July 1, how much did Arkansas return to the taxpayer? They brought in a record amount of revenue, and they gave us nothing back. They used it to grow the size of government. They used it to spend everything that they have. We have essentially no surplus. It's very frustrating. But this is the state of things right now. Right? We right now are plagued by leadership. They talk conservative on the campaign trail, but it's all talk. You know what I'm saying? They talk conservative. They use buzzwords, low-hanging fruit buzzwords. But even some of those, what you think that word means is not what they think it means. The biggest problem that we have in politics today is that the conservative base, or the people, let's just say the people, versus the establishment, status quo, the people who attend court at the Marble Palace, are really all the way up, all forms of government. We can't agree on what the definitions of words and phrases are. Our definitions end up being different than the politicians. We don't really, and that's why when somebody asks for your vote, you need to figure out what their definition of, what is their definition of Second Amendment rights, right? For example, Governor Asa Hutchinson, he says he supports your Second Amendment rights, but he supports you paying him money and him giving you a license saying you're okay to carry. That's his version of it. So, but he would say he supports the Second Amendment. We've got to agree. Well, okay, a tax cut. What's the definition of a tax cut? Well, a tax cut means that we lower this particular tax rate to here, and then we're going to raise over here this tax rate up here, and we're going to make sure government has the same amount of money that they have now, and that's a tax cut, and we'll put it on a mailer, and we'll ask you to vote for us again. Well, that's not a tax cut. A tax cut means the government gets less money than they're getting now. On paper. in a static environment. I want to be clear here, in a static environment. Now, it's very possible that when you give people more money in their pockets and the government on paper has less money, that the business owners create more jobs, hire more people, invest, and then you have more people paying taxes, and the government does get a little more money. But in that case, the government grew as we produced more goods, sold more cars, built more homes, participated in more economic activity, and that's okay. But you got to let the government get less money first and give us more of our own money back in our pockets.
You know, I just feel like we have in the media several different voices telling us all the same things, just a different way. And the problem is we're not hearing different voices. We're not hearing different issues, you know. Especially, you know, the libertarians don't do the best job at presenting themselves, and I feel like that's what turns off a lot of people. So if we can reinvent our identity and make being libertarian sexy, we can attract people to our ideas. The ideas are what are going to get people to stay, because those are the things that made America. Those are the things that made America great. Our ideals of working hard, being independent, you know, self-accountability, things like that. The ideas and the ideal that founded America are the things that the Libertarian Party still holds to. And even though our policies may not always flesh out in a way that the media can, like, make look pretty, I think those ideas are going to be what create legislation that brings about the change that we all want. And so we just have to give that a platform.
Yeah, that is extremely interesting, Matt, and I really appreciate, and I'm really glad that you are, you know, stepping up and trying to make a difference and trying to, you know, get your message out. I think that's encouraging. I think it's encouraging for our listeners to hear. How old are you, Matt?
I will be 31 in 15 days.
Well, then we're just going to go ahead and chalk this up as a young conservative. Well, real quick, you know, libertarian, young libertarian.
I'm not. Well, hold on. No, I'm like the most liberal conservative ever.
Well, so yeah, that's what I'm saying is. So we have these young conservative segments. So when you say you're like the most liberal conservative, what does that mean? What would that mean to you? Because see, that word conservatism is used in so many different ways. One of my biggest problems is, you know, we can't agree on the definitions of words and phrases, and so the word conservative might get used to amass political power, when in reality, you know, what the constituents think is conservative policy is not at all what the politician thinks is conservative policy. So they use these words to try to gain power. So tell us, what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. I mean, politically, I would consider myself very liberal, even though spiritually I'm conservative. I mean, I'll use gay marriage as a good example. You know, I will go toe to toe with any Christian in regards to, you know, the lifestyle of homosexuality. But, you know, I don't. When it came to gay marriage, I said it this way: if they want to lump themselves into the 50% divorce rate that
exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us today. The telephone number today, 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. The book, it came out this week. It's called Liars, Leakers, and Liberals, The Case Against the Anti-Trump Conspiracy. And joining us on the phone, we have the author of that book, Judge Jeanine Pirro, is on the program. Judge Jeanine, it's a pleasure to have you on the program this morning.
Well, thanks. It's good to be with you.
Yes, ma'am. I am so glad that you wrote this book. I've been doing some research about it. And I imagine because we live in these interesting times, it was a pleasure to write about President Donald Trump. Is he an interesting man to write about?
Well, he certainly is. He's a man I've known for many decades. And he was a man who was a successful businessman. He was successful on television, and the press, the media loved him. Cameos in movies. They couldn't stop writing about him. And then he announced he was running for president. He became the devil incarnate. The left, from the time he took office, has been having a collective breakdown. They blew their collective gasket, and now they've been trying to take him out of office. And because I've been a prosecutor, a judge, and a DA for 30 years, you know, I know the crime business. I've been in it a long time, and I know a con when I see it. And what they did with this president and continue to do was they set up a fake investigation with a make-believe dossier paid for by Hillary Clinton, the opposing political party, started an investigation, and this president for 19 months has been under an investigation that has shown nothing connected to him, and, you know, they will not stop. It is part of the lying, speaking, liberal left that just won't quit, and that's why I wrote the book. I thought it was important, and I outline all of this in the book.
I understand that, again, your book, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals, you do discuss Peter Strzok. But interesting, you wrote about him before his recent testimony before Congress. So I'm just curious, did his testimony surprise you, or did you pretty much have him pegged?
You know, I'm very impressed. You really did read the book. Yeah, I did. I think the book actually is almost prescient, because I had not heard Peter Strzok, nor did anyone, you know, in the general public here, until he testified last Thursday. The guy was smug, arrogant, condescending, defiant, unapologetic, all of the things that you would expect based on the emails with his lover, Lisa Page. But the interesting part of it all is he said, well, don't, you know, it's like one of those, don't believe your lying eyes. I said that the guy would destabilize the country. I said we'll have to stop him. And I talked about an insurance policy, which we now know is the Russia collusion in the event he was elected. But don't believe anything I said. It was late. It appears that his girlfriend, Lisa Page, now testifying behind closed doors, is taking him on with respect to what his intent was. And look, I've worked with FBI agents. You know, I've worked with police my whole life. I had an office with 50 law enforcement cops who worked with me. And I love law enforcement. I have tremendous respect. And the shame of this is that they have to hang their heads because people at the top of the FBI, McCabe, Comey, Strzok, you know, Rubicki, Baker, all these guys were involved in an attempted coup. And, you know, Lady Justice is supposed to be blind, but, man, they ripped those bandages off so that they could investigate this man and impeach him. And from the time Donald Trump got there was anything that he's done right to them. And I write in the book about all the good stuff. You know, not a single metric is worse under Donald Trump. The economy's never been better. ISIS caliphate is defeated. You know, there's deregulation. Businesses are being expanded. Tax reform. Americans have more money in their pockets now. I mean, and they hate the man. But, you know, anyone at the tip of the spear knows there's going to be pushback, but there isn't a better person to push back than Donald Trump.
That's for sure. And it seems like, I was just saying before you came on, it seems like every time the deep state or the media you know, sets these traps for him, eventually they fall into their own nets. We're talking with Judge Jeanine Pirro, her new book, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals. Now, you mentioned, you know, having offices next to some of these people throughout your career. Speaking of leakers, you talk about FBI director, former director James Comey. I understand you used to work, you know, close to him. Your offices were right next to each other. And tell me about Cardinal Comey. Tell me about this name, Cardinal Comey. What does that mean?
Well, you know, I knew James Comey. I was the elected DA in Westchester County. He was United States Attorney in the Southern District at the same time, and our offices were next to each other. And, you know, I liked the guy. I thought he was smart. He was certainly charismatic. He understood the law. And but then he went to the FBI, and I got to tell you, he drifted. Or I should say he went to Washington and he drifted. Because the fake investigation that he carried on, knowing what he knew as a prosecutor, with Hillary Clinton, no grand jury, no subpoenas, no search warrants, all the while she destroys evidence, refits, hammers iPhones, and then makes up this investigation about Donald Trump. I mean, they call him in the FBI behind his back Cardinal Comey. I speak to FBI. I'm friends with the FBI because he's got this holier than thou. I know everything. And now he's quoting the Psalms and the Bible. Give me a break. You lied before Congress. Donald Trump didn't do anything until he fired you. He wasn't under investigation until he fired you. And you're a leaker. You've admitted you're a leaker. I mean, I could go on, but you got to get my book. Leakers, leakers, and liberals.
Yeah, and it's available now, folks. So we've thrown the Amazon page up on the screen for those of you who are watching as instead of listening. Now, 3 days. I'd love to get your opinion, Judge Janine, on the recent news here. 3 days before President Trump and President Putin were scheduled to meet in Helsinki, you had the announcement of the 12 Russians being indicted. Now, to me, it seemed that there were some trying to stop this diplomacy or attempt at diplomacy from ever happening. And if it was going to happen, they were going to make it really, really difficult and give the media all of the fodder they needed to try to paint this concept of collusion. I mean, do you think it's a coincidence that Mueller announced those indictments 3 days before the Helsinki meeting?
I like you. No, it's no coincidence. Of course they decided to say we're indicting 12 Russians. Well, if you recall, they indicted 13 a few months back, having nothing to do with Donald Trump or collusion. They indicted a total of 25 Russians or charged them who will never be extradited, never be arrested, arraigned, tried, convicted, or sentenced. I mean, what is the point? It just keeps it in the news, and they're trying to get Donald Trump off his game. But as I say in the book, the man's a force of nature. He can walk into a den of lions and come out the winner. He has no fear. He takes incoming every day for the American people. And when you think about it, that guy could be in Scotland right now. He could have stayed in Scotland and kept playing golf. But he doesn't. He does it for us. And I'm honestly sick and tired of the attempt to destroy this man. I get politics. I've run for office 5 times. And a county judge and all that, but this is beyond the pale. They're calling for treason, sedition, because, he didn't take Putin out on stage when in truth, no one has had more severe sanctions on Russia. We're arming the Ukrainians against the Russians. Barack Obama stood and watched while the Russians annexed Crimea. And right now, what we're doing with Crimea is we're helping them to be able to, defend themselves. And the other piece on the Russia piece is that we got mass sanctions because of Crimea. We killed hundreds of Russians in Syria. And then Obama just talked about the red line. We've expelled Russians from the U.S. We're increasing missile defense in the intel community. I mean, not what you say, it's what you do.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. It's almost like they wanted a boxing match up there in that press conference, and they didn't get it. And it's quite. You mentioned treason. They're now claiming that a diplomatic meeting was treason, and I'm like, well, that's a pretty low bar. I mean, if that's the bar you're going to set, what was the Hillary Clinton Uranium One debacle? I mean, wasn't that then treason?
Oh, yeah, the sale of 20% of all uranium to the Russians was when the Clinton Foundation gets a $145 million kickback. Bill gets a quick $500 cash for a 20-minute speech in Russia. You want to talk about collusion? How about we talk about the fact that the effort on the part of Russia to access our uranium, which was all about bribery and corruption, indeed, they found Hillary Clinton. And that case is a case that was handled by Rod Rosenstein, and Rod Rosenstein is the one now heading the Russian investigation when he knows full well what happened, but he got Jeff Sessions to recuse himself, and Jeff, I haven't seen him in a while. He must be hiding in the closet somewhere. But, Jeff Sessions is not doing his job, and it's a shame because the American people are entitled to an attorney general who's doing his job and not someone who's going to take it and then recuse himself a day later.
Judge Jeanine Pirro, I so appreciate you coming on the program. It's been great to meet you. Again, your book, it's available in bookstores. It's available on Amazon. It's Liars, Leakers, and Liberals, The Case Against the Anti-Trump Conspiracy. Judge Jeanine Pirro, thank you so much for spending the morning with us.
Oh, I love spending the morning out there. I really do. And I thank you and your listeners. Have a great day.
Okay, you
Bye-bye.
too. Judge Jeanine Pirro, everybody. You can catch her weekends on Fox News, her show, her monologues. Judge Jeanine's monologues are some of the best, most passionate. And here's the thing. I understand she writes every one of those herself. Did you know that? We're going to take a break, folks. This is Conduit News Radio. I'm Paul Harrell. Back in just a moment.
This is Representative Dan Sullivan with the Liberty Moment. From the beginning, authors of our Constitution, Bill of Rights, Declaration of Independence, and the Federalist Papers advocated the general election of people who possess wisdom, discernment, and loyalty to their constituents. Why? The people expect their representatives to uphold their promises. The representatives recognize the honor bestowed by these constituents. Advancement comes from their followers, not the government. Elections are frequent, and accountability is a compelling factor to loyalty and support from constituents. From a July 5th, 1929 speech by President Calvin Coolidge. This is Representative Dan Sullivan with the Liberty Moment.
Paid for by Sullivan for Arkansas. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
With heterosexual couples, go ahead and let them. If they want to just file their taxes and then end up getting divorced, have to deal with all the litigation that the conservative religious Christian group in America, which also has the same divorce rate as spouses, then let them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't think you can't legislate morality, and if as Christians, we believe that if we believe that we're supposed to love people, if we believe that, only Jesus can change the heart, why do we want to create legislation? Why don't we actually, take on ourselves the responsibility of being the church and loving those people instead? And, it's statism to, expect the state to handle that whenever it's our responsibility as Christians.
Well,
if we, don't agree with them.
I've heard that point of view before, and I understand, your skepticism there. My whole thing with the gay marriage thing.
Bob Maloney here from ASA News, The Parrot. Breaking news from the Capitol in Little Rock. Over now to our new on-site reporter, Susan Shenanigans. Susan?
Thanks, Bob. The governor has just announced that a blue ribbon task force is to be formed.
Today, I'm asking your support for a blue ribbon legislative task force to be created and directed to recommend further reform.
Now we go live to the chamber to listen in for more information on the task force.
I hereby call this session into order. First on the agenda for today is the formation of the Blue Ribbon Task Force. Is there anyone who would like to give their thoughts on the task force?
Yes, as someone who's deeply conservative, why is the governor choosing the color blue for this task force? Sounds like he's really a Democrat loyalist. Why not a red ribbon to prove he's a true conservative?
Well, I represent Walmart, and we agree with the color of the task force ribbon. The color blue is best consistent with the Walmart brand.
I object to this choice. Blue is the wrong color ribbon for this task force.
Well, who are you?
I am Mr. P.C. Wrights, and I represent Target, and we want the ribbon to be red, not blue.
Hold it right there. This seems like a tough decision. Why not ask the governor to call a special session at a later date for an important decision as this?
I think this is something worth talking about. I motion that we decide the color of the ribbon today.
I second it. Fine. We can decide it now. Does anyone have any other suggestions for the color of the ribbon?
I think the color should be white.
Whoa. Hold on. Definitely not white.
I agree with Mr. P.C. Wrights. Maybe we should choose green for the farmers.
You like the color green because you are a farmer. I think it should be purple, so we can display how Arkansas is an extremely moderate state.
Why are we even discussing this? Shouldn't we be talking about tax reform instead of wasting time with this?
Well, the people have spoken. They believe this is worth talking about, so we are deciding this now.
Excuse me, sir, but shouldn't the color of the ribbon be rainbow to include all types of people?
Please, silence your phones.
I just received a call from Walmart HQ, and they agree with, what was your name again? My name is Fabulous. They agree with Fabulous that the color should be rainbow.
Target concurs with the decision of it being rainbow-colored ribbon.
Is there a motion to make the ribbon rainbow-colored?
I motion to make the color rainbow.
I second the motion. The motion carries because I said so.
The committee will now vote and not be on record to keep the people in the dark. Back to you, Bob.
Thank you, Susan. And thank you for listening to ASA News, The Parrot. Next up, there are reports of a gorilla on top of the Capitol Dome demanding massive sums of taxpayer cash. His name? Medicaid expansion.
PHP Parody.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us today. If you just are joining us and you missed Judge Jeanine Pirro on the program, we will have this clipped out, and so go follow us or like us on YouTube would be the best thing. So subscribe is what I'm trying to figure out. Subscribe to us on YouTube. And click the little bell so you receive notifications. But there's going to be a separate video go up later today of Judge Jeanine Pirro if you want to hear that interview. The contents of this book are pretty interesting, especially from her perspective. Again, her office used to be right next to James Comey, and this concept of Cardinal Comey is a joke. They make fun of this guy. Essentially, they make fun of James Comey behind his back because he's so fake and sanctimonious. And now that he's been caught lying and leaking, and he's exposed himself as a liberal because he's saying you got to go vote for Democrats now. It seems like Comey has a lot to lose. Clapper has a lot to lose. Brennan has a lot to lose. And we'll wait and see what happens. But it's pretty interesting that now he's on Twitter. He's quoting scripture now. In an attempt to I guess really he's trying to get, sympathy. That when he did that interview with Chris Wallace, I was amazed at how he's able to keep it together, how he's able to present himself as, and maybe it's one of those situations, it's like a condition, psychotic condition where, you tell yourself that you're right and you didn't do the things that you did so many times that you start to believe it. That's kind of the person that I feel like James Comey is. And I used to think James Comey was an okay dude. I really did. On the Fourth Amendment stuff, when he was the Associate Attorney General, under John Ashcroft, and you had that whole George W. Bush thing where Alberto Gonzales, and they tried to get him to, continue those anti-Fourth Amendment, Patriot Act provisions, while John Ashcroft just happened to, they thought he was on his deathbed, and they tried to get James Comey to sign off on it. I thought, oh, okay, well, here's a guy who just, he's got principles. I couldn't have been more wrong on that. Couldn't have been more wrong. But anyway, we'll have that video up. And, if you don't want to wait for the separate video, you can always, as soon as we end the broadcast here in about 6 minutes, you can go to conduitnews.com, click on video archives, and you have to forward through. You know what? Just watch the full 2 hours and experience it with us. How about you? All right, so real quick, opioids. What we're really coming down off of the high of interviewing Judge Janine. Opioids. All right, so the state of Arkansas. Yeah, you see the pun that I did there? You see it? Okay, so the state of Arkansas is trying to regulate opioids. The entire country is. These things were doctors were told by drug reps. Doctors were told by the industry, these drugs are fine. These drugs are perfectly safe. If you have pain, if you have chronic pain, there's nothing wrong. Basically, have no problem prescribing what we now know to be essentially synthetic heroin. Well, now, the truth of the matter is, you have these mass epidemics, you have these things going for, $10, $15 a pill on the street on the black market. Now we got to clamp down. And so the regulations are coming down on doctors now and how you prescribe these particular types of pain medication. And I've taken them before, and I don't understand what the big deal is. I remember I had a kidney stone, I guess, a couple of years ago, and they prescribed them. But I don't. But I mean, I never had any sort of, you know what I mean? I took them, and then I didn't take them anymore. And I never felt any sort of euphoria from it. I guess because I was in such an immense amount of pain, and the pain lasted for like a whole week. It was awful. So there are legitimate uses for these drugs where people don't get addicted to them, right? But then you have the unfortunate situation where people do get addicted. And what a lot of people are not telling you about this opioid crackdown is that now people are turning to actual heroin, meaning now that they can't get their high, they're going to the streets, and here is, you really want to know the truth? I have a speculation. If you do a quick Google search about Arkansas and hepatitis outbreaks, you will find that it's in the news, that their hepatitis has been, and they're asking people to get vaccinated. What they won't tell you is a lot of this increase in hepatitis has to do with people turning to heroin because they can't get their opioids anymore. And that, yes, you're having unsanitary practices going on. And that's not getting any news, but you should just know that is part of the reason. And I know that from reliable sources. So anyway, the state of Arkansas is trying to come up with even stricter restrictions on the doctors that prescribe high doses of these opioids. And the rules were debated, and Senator Terry Rice had a motion to delay. You see, the subcommittee initially approved the rules last month, but Senator Terry Rice asked the Legislative Council to refer them back to the subcommittee because the worry is that people who have legitimate pain are now no longer going to be able to cope with their pain, who legitimately use these drugs. On Tuesday, Rice said He has had 2 spinal surgeries, Senator Rice has, and has taken medication for chronic pain. And he asked the subcommittee to refer the rules back to the medical board to provide more protections for the chronic pain patients. Quote, regardless of what we say this rule will allow, the circumstances is doctors are cutting them all back, he said. Time is needed to find a balance of treatment and regulation. His motion died for lack of a second. On a motion by Representative Jeff Wardlaw, Republican, the subcommittee then approved the rules in a voice vote. I wonder who voted which way. Well, we don't know because you guys don't record your votes. You know, we can talk about putting cameras in the Senate, and I'm all for it because the House does it. They record it. They archive it. They stream it live. But you know what? It doesn't need to stop there. You need to record all legislative votes and stop this voice vote nonsense.